Good morning. Great Monday. Just getting everything adjusted here. Uh, it's not real easy to do a podcast. This old man is learning. Lots of guys have jumped in and helped me, and I appreciate them. But great to see you on Monday. Another Wall Street Journal. Another great day. Another great day in news. I want to get my things here together. So, interesting article on, and I've been waiting for this, on the rise of non-COVID deaths. And those of you who've been watching me for a while know that I predicted there'd be studies coming out later that shows this. And at the time, I predicted that our death rate this year, even taking COVID out of the argument, would be higher. And so it looks like that's happening, though the results still need more and more scientific data coming in, and I think we'll see that as the year comes in. But so I wanted to show this chart here, so this is the charts of 4 different diseases and the death rates. First of all, the dark line shows the 2015 to 2019 average, and then the bar shows, the weekly deaths, weekly deaths this year by cause. So if you look at the cerebrovascular, so in the head, brain vascular diseases, up really starting in March all through the end of the year, and right now, and it looks like it's gone just about back to average, has been over the average slightly. Again, the 3,000 range, so this would be a couple hundred, maybe 100 deaths a week. The diabetes is up quite a bit. Hypertension, lower right, is up, and you can see the real climb in the April-May timeframe. Really April, and though the cerebrovascular didn't experience that huge, it did have a little bit of climb, but the others had a larger increase. So, but Alzheimer's and dementia is dramatic, and in fact, that's been running 1,000 a week over the average, 1,000 a week. So a dramatic increase there. So, so you got to ask yourself, why does this happen? So, and as usual in my program, I don't give you one reason and run. And that's what a lot of media do. They pick a reason, right? So whatever fits their worldview, their bias, their confirmation bias, they pick a reason and run with it. And in fact, if I was a very liberal paper, I would say these should have been counted as COVIDs, and they weren't. So therefore, our COVID deaths are double than what they are right now. And so they'd be partly right. I think some of them are missed COVID deaths. And I think as the data comes in, we'll find some of that happen. But for instance, some of the reasons mentioned by the scientists are increased stress. So increased stress, and you can see that in hypertension and maybe diabetes, and certainly cerebrovascular. People have been avoiding the hospital, right? It's a place that has a lot of infections. I don't go there unless I have to. Elective surgery screening. So maybe some of these could have been fixed. Alzheimer's, dementia is certainly not in that category, but could have been fixed with some surgical procedures, but are not. And in fact, I'm a classic example of that. I'm waiting for a kidney transplant. Mayo made kidney transplants of elective surgery. So therefore, unless you were getting a donor from a cadaver, obviously they can't save cadavers, so they have to prioritize those. And so, they made them elective and they pushed those out. So how many things were pushed out? And as a result, people just they couldn't outlive the elective schedule. Senior care center lockdowns. And you look at the Alzheimer's and dementia and you wonder, You'd like to see a correlation of that, of how many people were in care homes in that number, and how that would affect people who didn't understand why they're being locked down, didn't understand why they weren't seeing their family when they had seen them the week before, and couldn't see them on months basis. And what, by the way, we're not even seeing their fellow people at the dining hall because they were, being fed, would put trays underneath their door. Now, of course, I'm exaggerating, but trays were put in the room and they were told to stay in the room. And again, I go back to some maybe were undiagnosed COVID, and we may clean that up over time. So just, by the way, so far this year, there's about 202 to 203,000 excess deaths this year. Okay, does that number sound familiar? 202,000 deaths this year, excess deaths over the average from 2015 to 2019. That's almost the same number of deaths as COVID. So has COVID created a situation where, we actually should be blaming Trump for 400,000 deaths instead of 200,000? Maybe somebody can get that news over to the Biden campaign. But we'll watch this. I think we'll have better and better studies come on, but this will be a great space to watch. So next article. Justice Ginsburg could have picked her replacement. She tried on her deathbed. It's supposedly told that her dying request was let the next president pick her replacement. Now, she had a great legal mind, but she clearly didn't understand the Constitution, understand how you pick a Supreme Court justice. And of course, the Constitution says the president's got, actually, until after election, even, like, people say the election changes. Then no, it doesn't. They can change until the new president gets put in. They can put in a candidate, and so, but so the observation I'd say is Justice Ginsburg has been thinking about this, okay, and right up to her dying bed, she's been thinking about her replacement. Now, why is that? Well, she's certainly very liberal. And she sees the Trump admin certainly, and presidents before has moved that court to the right a little bit, or and some conservatives more to originalist type thinking that Ginsburg didn't agree with. And so she's certainly been thinking about this. So my observation would be she's had a lot of opportunities. This health condition didn't come on suddenly, like the last jurist we lost. This has been going on years and years and years. And by the way, she's been a very elderly person for years and years. So many people even, and there was a lot of discussion about this in the Obama second term, that she would bow out and give Obama the chance. She didn't. And you got to ask yourself why she didn't. Maybe there's a clue in the Garland appointee that President Obama put up, and that the Senate in the last year of his term and the Republican Senate refused to hear. And so one of the problems of putting Supreme Court justices up is you have to have both the Senate behind you and of course the presidency. You have to own that presidency, and so Obama didn't, and he lost that battle. We can argue whether that should have been done that way. I think it should have had an up-down vote. I get tired of these going on months and months and months, no up-down vote. Vote, get it over with, and move on. But Obama put a moderate up, and there's a lot of people speculating why he put a moderate up. Maybe because Republican Senate and thought that was the best chance to get through. Maybe he really wanted a moderate and not a far left person on the court. And so maybe Ginsburg looked at that and said, nope, not going to let that happen. So many people think she gambled on Hillary, like millions and millions of people. Majority of the United States would have gambled on Hillary winning that election, and then she would have had a few more years, and then let Hillary choose and many people believe that Hillary would choose a more left-leaning jurist. Even in fact, probably a lot of people believe Garland wouldn't have been put back up by Hillary had she won the presidency. Many people believe that. So she gambled on Hillary, and then of course tried to outlive that term. And she even though she was been very sick, had to miss a bit. She did very well. I don't want but in spite of some very serious sickness and cancer, but she had her chance. And by the way, most jurists do. If they start very young, the presidencies last 4 to 8 years, and you can pick the president you want. You bow out, and you hope that president, maybe you could negotiate with. Maybe you go to him and say, "Let me see your list. Let me see who you've got on top of your list," and say, "Okay, I'll choose to drop out or not." But a little bit of story there on Ginsburg. So you've seen Icebreakers commercial now. So everybody's been staying home, not going to the office, so they need a lot less mints. So it's a huge business, and you got to do something to change the need for mints. So now they got an advertisement talking about mask breath, which people can only smell themselves, but the mask makes it easier to do that. So great commercial on. Looks like when you first start watching, it looks like that they're convincing you to be a mask wearer and not be one of those crazy people. But then it quickly converts into an advertisement for mints. So that reminded me of Edward Bernays, and many people call him the father of public relations. And I think in the 20s, around the early 20s, American Tobacco approached him with a problem that women were not smoking enough. And it was a huge market. And actually, a woman smoking out in public conveyed a woman of loose morals. And so women knew that it was very common knowledge, and they chose not to smoke and smoked a little bit at home, but obviously not enough business from American Tobacco. And so they approached Edward Bernays, and he came up with, many people believe, the most brilliant public relations move he could ever done. So it's Easter Sunday. There's an Easter Sunday parade in New York City, and he paid a group of women who were very well dressed, almost like they were going to a ball, very well dressed. So they attracted a lot of attention. And he paid them to move into very visible places of the parade and smoke while they're watching the parade. And when asked, the women were said, well, they felt emancipated now, that they were emancipated women, and they called the cigarettes torches of freedom. Do you get the correlation to the Statue of Liberty? And it was amazing. The news really picked it up because they were very well looked, very well dressed, very camera ready group of women, and they were doing something risque by lots of standards, smoking out in public. So the media picked it up, and it replicated throughout the world, by the way, and it worked. It really worked. So little side effect. I hope it didn't have much to do with the news, but hope you enjoyed that little bit change of pace there. Fourth story, clean power. So if you ask environmentalists, do they want clean power? Sometimes they get to no thanks, and I'll explain that. So you ask the environmentalists, what are their plan for clean power? And they'll tell you, well, I want zero emissions by year 2050. That's typically the response. Some of them move that back to 2035. So immediately follow that up with a question to say, is nuclear part of your answer? Nuclear power. By the way, very clean emissions, right? None, zero emissions, nuclear power. Couldn't ask for a better one, right? So what will they environmentalists do? Well, typically they'll look at their shoe and mumble something about it being too expensive. Now, that's a pretty rich response because environmentalists have fought nuclear tooth and nail for years and years and years. Somebody said in the articles, they said, a nuclear person now saying this is too expensive is like saying you're an orphan after you killed your parents. You're an orphan after you killed your parents. So it's you predicted this would happen, you hoped it would happen, and now it's happened. So the space you ought to watch is this SMR space, that small modular reactor. Some say it's small mid-sized reactors. But typically it's modular. I think is the better answer because, by the way, they can be built in factories and transported to the locations. This came, by the way, out of the military in the 50s about being able to build a nuclear plant on the back of a large truck. And so modular, they could move it around and have quick access to a lot of power. So, watch the space of SMRs. It's really hurting the U.S. right now in regulations. SMR is treated just like a large nuclear plant, which is unfair because they're much more safe. And the way they work is really radically different than large plants, and they should have a different system to look at it. But I think this is something we could look at technology-wise. Serves small rural areas very easily to add these. They work in a modular fashion, so you can add. Usually, they're very small plants. 60 megawatts is usually a typical plant. You could put 6 of them together. One of the observation is a grouping of 6 of these could have solved the recent brownout conditions in California because they were about 4,000 megawatts short of what they needed. And this could have quickly handled that with no emissions. But what did we do? We fired up generators all over the state. We took power from Arizona and coal plants in Arizona. I think there is one left. And so on, New Mexico and so on. So I really think we talked before in this program about branding problems with Black Lives Matter. Nuclear power has got a branding problem, right? We got to get the word nuclear out of it, and we might have a chance. We'll see. And the last one I have today is about the Democrats, the Dems threatening around the Ginsburg replacement on the Supreme Court justice. And so you'll see a lot of threatening right now that they want to remove the filibuster and then pack the court. So one of the things the Republicans could do, and this is always, instead of arguing the position many times, okay, if I've said before and just recently said, agree with their position and say, okay, let's just make sure who's for this and who's not. Republicans could say, every Democratic candidate, Mark in Arizona for the Senate, go to them and say, okay, what's your position on this? Do you want to pack the court? Do you want to increase the court by 2 to 4 more positions when you get in place? And by the way, do you want to do away with the filibuster? And so, make them declare this as their position. And so, by the way, this is not new. So I, unlike many people, in fact, many Democrats, have not read their own platform. If you'd have read their platform, this was very clear. Now, it didn't talk directly about Supreme Court, but listen to me and you'll get there. So their platform says, fill newly created seats on federal benches. Newly created seats on federal benches. So a lot of their position is to take away the effect. A Trump administration, by the way, had tremendous effect on Supreme Court. But federal bench is huge, huge, hundreds of judges out there during his tenure, and that's changed the federal bench makeup. So how can they counteract that? What they're saying is that the U.S. government's grown a lot since the 90s. Last time we've changed the amount of federal judges on the bench. So therefore, we need more federal judges to handle the caseload. And the way we do that is during our term, we'll increase the number of federal judges. So for every one that Trump put on, we'll put another one on, and of course we'll put our type of judge on, and that will take away his type of judge or their type of judge. So anyways, so their platform's real clear, and to take that over to the Supreme Court side is real easy to say that they've already been here, been thinking about it for quite a while. This is nothing new caused by Trump and his minions. Okay, this has been a platform. So. But on the opinion page, I thought it brought out a pretty good point. It says, Democrats bemoan the originalist bent of Trump picks. They embrace no competing doctrine, only that judicial power equals political ends. So to summarize that, they've said power separated from principle. So if you listen to conservatives, they'll tell you what they want in Supreme Court justice. And by the way, it's very easy for them to list a list of people like Trump amazingly has done both elections, by the way, something I've said Biden should do. He won't. And it's obvious why he won't. But, conservatives want originalists. They want people to say, I'm going to go read the Constitution again and again and again, see what it says, and enforce the law back to that language. So somebody who's not an originalist obviously want to say, well, time changes things. People changes things. We feel different these days. So we got to take into account our feeling and what current thought is these days and say, well, what would those that wrote the Constitution, how would they have written it if they were in today's world? They would have rewritten it. So therefore, we have permission to rewrite it. But it's interesting. You can't get a Democrat person to say what their judicial principles are. They just know the person when they see the person. And Ginsburg obviously was one of those persons. So interesting opinion page, and I thought it might give you something to think about as we go through this great time we're going through right now. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you have a great day. Had a great weekend. And I'll see you back tomorrow with another great Wall Street Journal report. Cheers.